Hey, this is Professor Homa. We're going to review starting our HTML page in Dreamweaver. This is our composite that we worked with last time. We made our images. We have 4 images that we're going to use. And now we're going to start building our web page in Dreamweaver. So I'm going to click over to Dreamweaver, and there's nothing open right now. And the first thing we're going to do is define our site in Dreamweaver. Now what that means by defining our site, it means we tell Dreamweaver the folder that is going to be our site. So we already have that, so make sure things are organized nicely in a folder. And I'm going to go Site, New Site, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it GW JLC Site. And you can name this anything you want. This is just for you. This is not going to go up on a web page or anything like that. This is just for you, so you could identify it in Dreamweaver. Okay. Also, you give it a name, and then you go find it. You have to go point to it. So I'm going to go click on the Browse button. And I'm going to click and go navigate to my folder. Now I may have it in a different place than you. Okay, and here's my folder, and you just have to hit choose. You don't have to open it further, just hit choose. And then hit save. Okay, and now over here, if you look over here in the files area, you should see your folder. That should be the defined folder, and then you should see everything that's in it. And so far there's just images and pre-art. And we're not going to use our pre-art to put up on the web, but we will use our images. There should be 4 images in there, and I'll stretch this out, and there they are, our header, nav, side pics, and the tractor address image. Okay, now first thing we're going to do is start a new page. I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to start a new HTML page, just blank right from the top, and hit Create. Okay, and I have this in side-by-side view right now, so I can see design, and I can see my code. If I just looked at code, it would look like this. If I just looked at design, there would be nothing there because we have nothing on our page yet. So I'm going to go to my code, and here's my doc type HTML. If it doesn't say doc type HTML, you could change that. I changed my preferences so it would show the HTML5 declaration, which this is what it looks like. Sometimes you'll see this in caps. It doesn't matter, but if you wanted to put it in caps, you could do that. Also here, you could also do HTML lang equals en. That's also another HTML declaration, so you could do that. Your title, I'm just going to put Johnson Lawn Care here. Okay, and I'll pause this now and then. You're not going to have to watch me type all the time. And you could put your title up here too. If I click off of here, if I go into Split and go back to code, you'll eventually see your title show up here, replaced with this Johnson Lawn Care. Okay, also in my head tags underneath title, one more thing I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to put link rel equals style sheet in quotes, and then I'm going to put ref with the H equals, and I'm going to put the name of my style sheet. I'll just put JLC styles .css. Now we didn't make that yet, but we will make it. But just for the time being, I'm just going to put that in here. That's going to link to our style sheet once we in fact have it. But I'm going to put that code in here right from the beginning. So other than that, we have our body tags and our closing HTML tag. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is start breaking this page up into its sections that we already had. They'll be inside the body tags, and I'm going to put double returns in front of everything. And I'm just going to put extra space, and you could break this up as much as you want. I'm going to start off with my header tag. That's where the header of the page is going to go, and it's different than the head tag. So I'll put header, and then I'll put my less than sign and my forward slash, and it'll finish it off for me. Okay, and then I'm going to put all my other ones. So I'll pause this. I'll do that just so you don't have to watch me type it. Okay, here's my sections of my HTML page. Notice there's an HTML header tag. There's a nav element, a section element, and a side element and footer element. These are all HTML5s. In the past, before we used them, we used to use these, just like the one here. See this one that says div ID equals address? That's the way we used to name these. It used to be div ID header, div ID nav. But for this one, there's no one for address, so we actually still used a div for this one. So we're going to just use, you could still use divs, they're fine, but since we have the newer elements, we're going to use the newer elements when we can and get used to doing them. But this is an ID here, and it'll work just the same way. We'll still set up a style sheet for it, except when we do a style for it, we'll identify it not just by address, but it'll have a pound sign in front of it or a hashtag in front of it. So, and just to get started here, I just want to show you something. I'm going to take the header image right from my files, and I'm going to drag it right in between here into my header. So I'm just putting in content. And it's asking for an alt tag, so I'll just put JLC header for now. You want to be as descriptive as you can for accessibility. I'll hit OK, and there's the file inside there, inside that div, and notice that it's a real long URL. The reason it's real long because it's an absolute URL, not a relative one. Relative means it's based on where it is inside the folder. And right now it doesn't know this file is not inside the folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. I'll do save as, and I'm going to save it in my site folder in the main directory, so not inside images or anything like that. I'm going to call it index because it's going to be our home page. And once I hit save, you can see it'll now shorten it, and that is a relative URL because it's just saying that that image is in the images folder. So that's where it is relative to this index page, because before that it didn't know that the index page was part of this site. So now this is part of a site. You see it over here. Here's my index page over on the right side here in my files, and now the images is relative, and you can see it's images slash, meaning it's inside this folder images. Okay, so that's the first thing. If I go in split view, you can see it just threw my image on the page in no particular way, just in a default type of layout, just align left. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is get all my content in these sections. I'm not going to format it or do anything. I just want to get my content in there. So within my nav tags, I'm going to put my nav buttons in there. And I'll just put, you know, navigation. Now this is where having individual buttons or individual, you know, actually CSS text buttons would probably be better. So I'm going to put that in there for now. I'll just call it navigation. And those are in there. Okay, now one thing I just noticed, I put my, my header image inside my div. That's wrong, and that's okay. I'm just going to drag this up here. That should be in your header. I'm not sure why I put it in my address. The address is going to go in the address. And so you could do this. You could go back to Photoshop, and I'm going to highlight with my text tool, wherever my text tool is. I'm going to highlight my text tool in here, and I'll just copy this, and I'll go back to Dreamweaver, and I'll just paste it in my address. Sorry for that mistake, but that's okay. So that's where my address goes in the address. The header goes in the address. You should have stopped me when I did that. So going back to Photoshop, I can also take this stuff. Now this is Libsum type, so I'll copy this, I guess, as well. And I could just copy this type, and I'll put it back into my Dreamweaver page, and that's actually in the section part. So I'll just paste that in there. Okay, and then before these, I'm going to put p tags in there to identify those as paragraphs. And I'll put my closing tags. So for each one, I'll put a p tag because each one is going to be a new paragraph, and that way, if I put you know, any space between them, I'll put that in there. So, and I'll just put section on its own line so I can see it a little bit better. And after section, there's going to be an h1 tag that I put hi in there. Make sure you put h1, and then inside h1, it's just going to say welcome and ... and I'm going to finish that off my h1 tag. So if I look at design right now, this is what it looks like. So my page is starting to take shape. It's actually, you know, we're getting our content in there and our structure. So we have our address, we have our navigation buttons, we have our header that's up there, and we also have our main content. And the last thing, we also have a side images. So I'll go over here and just drag these side pics right over here. They go into a side, and I'll just leave them there, and I'll just call them side pics for now, because they're not that important, so but at least they're identified. And then in the footer, that's just that friendly service, friendly. I could even type that, or I could copy and paste that. So I'll just pause and put that in real quick. Okay, and I think I'm done with the HTML that's here. I'll make sure I save this. I'll go back into design view, and this is what it should look like so far. This is the content. We have our header, our address, our navigation. We have our welcome, and we have our content, and then we have our sidebar, and we have our footer at the bottom. Now this excludes any copyright or any other small print type stuff that may be put in there later. And this is default HTML. So notice everything's in, looks like Times New Roman. All paragraphs and headers have big spaces in between them. You can see there's default margins on the top of the page and on the left of the page. So those are some of the things we're going to take out with our CSS. We're also going to change the font, change the colors, and we're going to also put these things side by side. Our next to our navigation is going to be our section, and then our sidebar is going to be next to that, and then our footer is going to go along the bottom. And we're going to put in the color and all that kind of stuff. Notice our ID already has like a little block around it because it's treating it as a separate section already. So we're going to format all this with our CSS. So the next thing we're going to do, if I click here, it's saying there is no local CSS file because we didn't make it yet. So we're going to have to do that next. So that'll be the next part. But just for now, looking back at this, I'm just going to make sure I have everything. Again, this is the content and the structure. This is the order that it goes, and this is the content that's going in for our HTML page. We're not going to do a whole lot else in here right now because our CSS is going to describe everything and it's going to present everything in a nice way. So I'm going to stop here.